And once we have covered how we can work with strings as well as our argument object, next we're going to take a look at the node list. And node list is, of course, something that we're getting back when we're selecting multiple elements. In our case, those are going to be the paragraphs. Up in my index HTML, I have 3 paragraphs, and then I have 2 headings. And then essentially we're going to do the same thing when we use the spread operator. Remember when we covered the spread operator, we did something similar where we turned our node list into array, and then we iterated over the list and then grabbed the text and then placed it within the some kind of div. Now in this case, this is going to be heading. And the reason why we're going to have 2 headings, because I'm going to show you the long way and then the short way, because I think it's just going to explain better if we do it also the long way. But there I'm going to show you also the shorthand, how we can skip over the long code. And then up in my app.js, I have selected all of them. I've selected the paragraphs. I've selected the result as well as second, just because it is not our first rodeo. So I don't see the point of typing it all together. And first, we're going to take a look at, of course, our paragraphs. We already know that it is a node list. That's the reason why we cannot call, of course, our array methods. And you can probably guess that we're going to use array.from. And you're going to be amazed by our result, because I'm going to go with new text, and that is going to be equal to array.from. So array.from, and then let's just pass in our paragraphs. And you can probably guess that if we're going to console log it, this is going to be an array, and you're going to be correct. So now we can do whatever we would want. What we would want to do, well, probably would want to use map method, correct? So iterate over, then join all of them together, and then place it within one of the headings. And let's start working on that. We're going to go with a new text. New text is going to be equal to my new text previous result. And of course, since I'm using let, I can do that. I can just say that the new value for new text is going to be the new text itself. But of course, we're going to use the map method, which returns a new array. So essentially, we're just going to be overriding that. So we're using map method. Okay. And then each and every item in our callback function is going to be our item. And instead of just returning the paragraphs that we have access to, I would like to return a span. So let's return a span. Let's close out the span. And then within the span, we're going to access, of course, each and every text content. So we're going to look for item, text, content, and then we would want to join it together because we're going to have the array. Awesome. But since I would want to insert as one string, I'm going to use the another method that we have covered before, join. Or in this case, I would want to join it with white space. So I'm just going to pass here the white space. We're going to save it. And then since I have access to a result div, I'm just going to go with a result, and then inner HTML is going to be equal to a new text. We're going to save that, and there's going to be a nice string in my result div. And of course, I'm just getting the text content from each of them and then just placing within my div. So this would be a long way of doing that. However, we can shorten this up quite a bit. And the way it's going to work, we're going to do the same thing like we did with the result, just with a second. And by the way, we don't need to create a new text or anything like that. We already have access to a paragraph. So we're going to do exactly the same, just a bit shorter. So we're going to go with const text. So we're going to assign it to a new variable. And in this case, we right away going to run array.from. And then within the array.from, we can just use the document query selector all. So instead of assigning it to a variable and then using array.from, we can directly run array.from and then pass in our document query selector all. So we right away are getting our array. So that's step number 1. Number 2, when we run array.from, in fact, we have the second argument. So the first argument is going to be the array-like or array-ish that we're going to be turning into array. Now, the second one is, in fact, actual map callback function. And our callback function is going to be, again, applied to each and every item. Same how we work with map. And then if you want to check it out, what is going to be each and every item, just console log it. So I'm going to go with some kind of parameter. I'm going to call this item. And then if we console log it, you're going to see that nicely within a console, we have each and every paragraph. And you could probably already see that we can do exactly the same functionality like we had before. However, in this case, of course, it is a bit faster. We right away have the array.from, we pass in our node list, and then we can set up our map method. And what I would want to do from my function that is applied for each and every item, well, I would want to return, of course, my span. But just to show you that we can return whatever we would want, I can say here, hello, and then we're going to go with hello world. And then if we're going to console out text, of course, in the console, I'm just going to have array with hello world, hello world, hello world. Why? Because from this map method, whatever I'm going to return as I'm iterating each and every item, this is going to be returned into new array. So this gives me an access to each and every item that I'm passing in, but I can return whatever I would want, whatever my heart desires. Now, in my case, I still want to use the item as my reference. So I am going to go with span. Then within the span, we're going to set up a item again. We're going to access, of course, our variable. We're going to look for item, then text content. And then we're going to use the second div, and we're going to look for inner HTML, and we're just going to place our text in there. Now I can save it. Of course, right now, everything works correctly where I have my spans. The only thing that's missing that, of course, again, I would need to use the join. So let's go with join again. Let's use the white space in this case. Now I have all my spans with the white space. And then lastly, like I said, let's work with the second div. Then second div has the inner HTML property, inner HTML, and that is going to be equal to our text. And it works exactly the same. However, you can see that we can shortcut a bit where we right away use the array.from. And also please keep in mind that when we use array.from, we have a second argument, which is our map method, which maps over each and every item that we're passing in to array.from. And then we can return whatever we would want from this function. And whatever we're going to return is going to be placed in our new array.